What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and let's talk magical phenomenon in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This falls into one of the three subsets of environmental hazards in the DM tools section at the end of the book, and it has a lot of things that, honestly, some of them have been referenced in other books when you're talking about different planes of existence and stuff like that, and we just haven't really had a good idea of how to work them, so we kind of had to figure them out ourselves. Now, we have codified rules for it. Not to say you couldn't do it on your own, but codified rules does help, especially for folks who don't really know what they want or have any concept of homebrewing, which again falls into what I've been saying throughout all of these videos is Tasha's has this, it's okay for you to do X, we're going to provide you an option to do so if you don't feel comfortable homebrewing it, which is good, especially with the bevy of new players in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Standard YouTube stuff. If you like the channel, give this video a thumbs up, if you like this video anyway, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's also a join button there. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. It just helps to support the channel. If you like to use this platform over Patreon, and it gives you, loyalty badges next to your name and emotes whenever I do live streams here on YouTube, which I do plan to do more of in the new year, but working in the holidays has been nutty, so I haven't had a chance to do as much as I wanted. Which is why we're still making Tasha's Cauldron videos in the new year, which the plan was to finish it last year. But work really just took, day job really got in the way, and night shifts, they slowly drain you. So if I look tired, I'm not really tired. I just had to stay up all night for multiple days in a row. Anyway, let us dive in right here. So here we go. We have this really awesome piece of art, which I love. This is an Eldritch Storm, and it's this cool ship. I don't know what the Eldritch Storm is. Maybe it's a necrotic storm. Maybe we'll see that as we read. Because we see these cool, skull clouds. And this is maybe a Leviathan-type skeleton. Maybe it's a Naga. Nagas I don't think are this big. Maybe the storm is bringing the skeleton back. Who knows? But the first one that's listed here is a Flaywind, which is interesting because I was actually trying to figure out how to stat this 2 weeks ago because I thought my players were going to be going to Carceri. And it turns out they weren't. But it says supernatural powerful winds. Things from the plane of Pandemonium or Minethus, the third layer of Carceri can spawn Flaywinds. So I was going to send them to, they were going to possibly have to travel there. They weren't a very high level campaign. They were going to have to travel there to find someone. But I did, in my Rod of 7 Parts campaign, we went to Pandemonium. And we had some checks that we had to make, but there's actual rules now. So I'm curious to see how it varies. So a Flaywind is an intense sandstorm, gathering large rocks and other debris. The area within the storm is heavily obscured, and a creature exposed to the storm takes a d4 slashing damage at the start of each of its turn. Only substantial cover offers shelter against the flensing grit. A Flaywind leaves 46 feet of sand or debris in its wake. A successful DC 15 Arcana or Nature check or Survival check allows a character to recognize a Flaywind 1 minute before it strikes, allowing time to seek shelter. A Flaywind typically lasts a d4 times 10 hours. So we kind of just had general wins when we went to Pandemonium in that game. It wasn't the DM, so I just went along with what happened. We couldn't really speak. We had to shout and yell, and you had to make a saving throw basically every time you slept there because the winds could cause madness or something. This is cool too, though. It could be brutal. A d4 slashing damage doesn't sound like a lot, but a d4 slashing damage every 6 seconds for as long as you're within the storm goes real quick, right? That's every minute you're taking 10 d4 damage. Now, there's ways to get around slashing damage and reduce it, but even still, the thing in the long-run numbers game, you lose to the Flaywind. Then we have a Flame Storm. Sooty thunderclouds shot with red and orange lightning with a deluge of fiery droplets. This is like acid rain, except instead of acid, it's fire. Creature caught in the burning rain takes 2d6 fire damage. The droplets ignite any flammable objects that aren't being carried or worn. Otherwise, they burn out. Smoke, soot, and crackle and low roar. The storm poses disadvantage on perception checks. A flame storm usually lasts for 2d4 minutes. Through the originating storm though it can persist for days, creating multiple flame storms. We don't have any idea of where this would be, but I guess that gives you the credence as a DM to drop it wherever you need it. We have a necrotic tempest. Perhaps that's the one we just saw. Let's see. Essence of death roil through dark clouds, manifesting leering skulls and bone white lightning. Okay, that was that one. Any creature exposed to the storm that isn't a construct or undead must make a constitution saving throw or take necrotic damage. Creature that dies rises as a skeleton or a zombie, the DM's choice, d10 minutes later, and it lasts for a d4 hours and leaves crops withered and wells undrinkable for a d4 days after its passing. And lastly, we have Thrym's Howl. This is sort of our ice storm. Bone-chilling blizzards drive a wall of wind and snow like a living glacier. They project extreme cold, as per the DMG, and due to the howling wind and dense blue-white ice particles, the area in the storm is heavily obscured, and range attack rolls and perception checks have disadvantage. Any creature exposed to the storm at the start of its turn takes 2d6 cold damage and can't regain hit points until it spends an hour in a warm environment. If they die in the storm, they freeze solid. Creatures that are immune to cold damage are immune to the effects of the storm and can see normally within it. It usually lasts 2d10 hours. Next up, we have Emotional Echoes. Occasionally, a place becomes infused with the powerful emotions of the people who once dwelled there. This could be positive or negative. Once per day, if a creature within the area expresses even the faintest hint of the prevailing emotion, the land seeks to hold on to that creature and inspire it to produce more of the feeling. The targeted creature is targeted by suggestion, as per the spell, DC 16, with the intent of making it linger in the area and perform an act related to its associated emotion. The effect lasts 24 hours, and we can see the different emotions here. We have Boldness. Appears in battlefields and echoing canyons, encouraging creatures to shout hidden truths and act out their greatest victories. Doubt, cliffs or deserts, makes creatures hostile, mistrusting their ability to climb or escape their current difficulties. Fear appears in caves and ruins, overwhelming creatures with dread and urging them to give voice to their deepest fears. Hatred appears in volcanic regions and provokes creatures to scream and destroy things. Interesting. Inspiration appears around memorials or natural wonders, causing creatures to create works of art on the spot and obsess over them. That could be really fun, like a town that's just filled with this inspiration thing. Joy appears in glens and flowering fields, inspiring creatures to dance, relax, and sing. Love appears along beaches or orchards and encourages creatures to confess their love to others and endlessly list their favorite things. Or sorrow appears in ruins and swamps, particularly around quicksand, and overwhelms creatures with sobbing and confessions of regret. Then we have an enchanted spring, as we can see here. It looks like there are some like elves or maybe satyrs in the water here, with some fancy deer with their antlers all full of flowers, and this kind of Obad High looking mustache mouth waterfall thing. They brim with miraculous waters, whether they tap into the magical sources hidden beneath the earth or are blessed by eldritch beings. Many enchanted springs bear the blessings of wild gods or fey beings. That could be Sylvanas, Obad High. That's very, Father Forest kind of a deal. These waters, it might be waters that were long ago polluted by the ichor of an evil entity. As the pristine enchanted springs, folks seek out such defiled places to purify them and claim their foul powers, depending on which way it goes. Regardless of whether a spring is pure or tainted, creatures might drink the water to experience the spring's effects, simply touch the water or bathe in it for a minute to gain the triggering effect. This could be very good for like a druid grove or a moon pool or something like that. This could be very fun. I have some thoughts for this in my own game, so that's exciting. Bottling a water removes its magical properties unless the bottle is specifically prepped by whatever being enchanted the spring in the first place. So you're not going to be able to bottle this water up and take it for later unless you have a special bottle to do so. There are D12 effects here. We'll take a look through a couple of them. First one here is basically Bless for an hour. Then we've got a bonus to AC of +1. You cover with feathers. Vanish after a D4 days. We'll jump down over here into number 5. You have the Spider Climb spell for 24 hours. Bathing in the spring causes a D10 flowers to grow from your head. They smell lovely, and they renew their vitality and scent every day. They vanish after 7 days. Well, this one gives you eye stalks, which could be terrifying. They'll let you see in all directions and give you advantage on perception checks for D4 days until they vanish. And then, it looks like none of them are permanent, so you won't be able to get anything super cool permanently. But 12 is bathing in the spring causes a creature to develop a third eye on their forehead, giving them true sight out to 60 feet. The eye vanishes after 24 hours. So those are all momentary things. Then we have magic mushrooms, quite literally magic mushrooms. It says they grow in areas with weird mystical energy. The Underdark seems like a solid one, but the Feywild also makes sense. Creatures proficient in medicine, nature, or survival can be versed in the concept of fungi, and especially the magical kind, knowing that they have powers. And we have a D10 table here. I think these are also, again, temporary things. So we see number 1, creature's skin turns an unusual color. Oh, this lasts permanently until a greater restoration or similar magic happens. So we could have purple with yellow splotches, bright orange with tiger stripes, tree frog green with red squiggles, or hot pink with yellow spots. Those could be fun. We got 3 is you gain 5d8 plus 20 hit points. That was 3. 5 is you can understand and speak all languages for a d4 days. And then it looks like we might, okay. 8 is immediately cast Time Stop with no components. And then, let's see, immediately detect thoughts. And then lastly, at 10, Magic Mist pours out of the creature's eyes and ears, acting as a fog cloud spell for a minute that is centered on the creature and moves with it. So sadly, again, no permanent effects here other than your skin color change. It looks like everything else. Or you can cluck and croon like a chicken. Oh, and you can speak and understand chickens, but that's only for an hour. Then we have everybody's favorite that everyone seems super excited to hear about, Mimic Colonies, and we can see some very interesting art here showcasing. I don't know if the ladies themselves are mimics, but their teacups are mimics. The chest is mimic. They're in a mimic house. They have mimic planters, mimic chairs and barrels, and so on. So let's read about the Mimic Colony. Okay, mimics imitate terrain and dungeon dressings to hunt for food. Rare specimens develop a deeper understanding of the world and can communicate with other creatures. In extreme rare cases, they band together. These bonded mimics cooperate to create larger objects and any lone mimic could create. They work together to form buildings, bridges, crystal formations, cliff faces, and nearly anything it desires. Entire villages appear out of nowhere, might be composed of mimics. Members of the colony develop telepathy and the ability to speak. While within 10 miles of a colony, any mimic can communicate telepathically with other creatures within 120 feet of it and speak common and undercommon fluently, or 2 other languages the DM decides. They gain these abilities innately and can use them even away from the colony, as shown in the Juvenile Mimic stat block, which we'll get to. Mimic Colony's primary goal is survival. If threatened by a force the mimics can't overcome, they're willing to bargain. They've learned that adventurers they can't defeat can be bought off with information about local sources of creature or locations, hidden treasure, and so on. If the colony's survival is threatened and it thinks it has a chance of surviving a fight, it can leverage its combined might using special lair actions, which we can see here. The Mimic Colony chooses up to 3 creatures within 300 feet. They each must make a strength saving throw or have their speed reduced to 0, and on initiative count 20 on the following round, as pieces of the environment grasp the target. If they fail by 5 or more, they are restrained. The Mimic Colony uses the help action, aiding a creature within 300 feet. The colony chooses up to 3 creatures within 300 feet. Each must make a dex save or take acid damage as they spew acid at them. And lastly, the Mimic Colony chooses a cube of magical, inanimate material and physical contact with it. The colony reshapes that material however they want. That lasts for an hour. We have the Juvenile Mimic stat block here, which says when determining the difficulty of an encounter with a hostile Mimic Colony, consider the colony to be 1 additional creature of challenge rating 2. So the Juvenile Mimic is challenge rating 0. This could also make an interesting pet or possibly even familiar, depending on how you want to run this. But it doesn't have a lot of hit points, immunity to acid in the prone condition, still has the false appearance ability that mimics have, has spider climb, the ability to walk on all ceilings and stuff, even upside down, has its bite ability, which does have minimal piercing damage and a little acid damage, and it can polymorph into an object and back to its true amorphous form. And that is the entire Mimic Colony, which is cool. I still can't tell if these people are mimics living here or they're just mimics that are meant to look like people. Then we have Primal Fruit. This is also very interesting. In wild places brimming with nature's power, gardens meticulously tended by eccentric wizards, and blessed groves touched by divine providence, plants can sometimes produce fruit bursting with primal magic. Not every fruit-bearing plant stores this magic or has this magic, but it's obvious when it does so. A fruit-bearing plant that is suffused with magic might produce 1d6 pieces of primal fruit every week. It remains potent for 1 week and then loses its magical properties, but remains edible. As an action, a creature can eat a piece of primal fruit. The fruit can be squeezed into juice or cooked into a dish and retains its magic. Choose an effect or roll on the primal fruit effects table to determine what happens when a piece of fruit is consumed. An identify spell or similar magic reveals the beneficial effect of the fruit before it's eaten, but it doesn't reveal a curse or side effect. We have a D8 tables here. So the lowest one here regains 3d8 plus 4 hit points, and your skin sheds bright light and dim light within 5 feet for an hour. Let's see. The next one is for an hour. You have advantage on attack rolls using strength checks and strength saving throws, and when it ends, you get a level of exhaustion. You need resistance to a damage type for an hour. Let's see. Creature doesn't require food, drink, or sleep for D4 days. For the duration, they can't be put to sleep by magic and dreams intrude upon its waking thoughts, imposing disadvantage on perception checks. And lastly, whispers intrude their mind for 24 hours. For the duration, they can telepathically communicate with any creature within 120 feet. If the creature understands at least one language, it can respond telepathically. So again, no permanent things, not that we need them, from what I can tell, but still interesting stuff. And lastly, we have Unearthly Roads. Currents of magic run through the world. Invisible artery-like networks that exert subtle influence and connect desperate lands. Let's see. Unearthly Road acts like a sort of planar portal that stretches from one place to another. Allow creatures to cross great distances rapidly, so almost like a teleportation circle, kind of. These paths operate like long tunnels, and a creature that travels on an unearthly road progresses 21 miles of distance in the time it would take them to travel 1 mile. While on the road, glimpses of the world beyond might be visible in blurred or distorted visions or scenery or especially prominent landmarks. Some unearthly roads serve as trade routes or secret connections between distant lands. The Unearthly Road key table offers suggestions on how to enter an unearthly road, and that's what we have here. Throwing a silver orb through an ancient arch, spilling a pint of humanoid blood, permanently sacrificing a memory of joy, or being the descendant of a legendary hero just gives you that ability. So that is it before we dive into natural hazards, which will be the last one. We'll make that the third video in this series. These were not as interesting as I thought. I think the supernatural regions were really fun. I was hoping for more from Mimic Colonies, and with all the hype that people were giving them, I thought it would be a little bit better. I like the Eldritch Storms. I think those are pretty cool. The emotional echoes could be interesting. Again, like I said, areas of great sorrow, suffering, joy. I feel like the areas of joy would be interesting because normally you only hear about like, oh, this is a site of an ancient battle and now there's like spooky echoes, but not like, man, some people were really happy. Like a really badass wedding happened here. And like everybody had so much fun. Everybody was drinking. Nobody had any hangovers. It was great. And now every time you're there, there's memories and echoes of joy. That could be really fun. Again, the Enchanted Spring and the Magic Mushrooms, I wished for something. I don't know why I want things to be permanent. They shouldn't be. They're just like encounters that you randomly have. And they could definitely be fun and people would enjoy them in the moment. So it's nice to have those, even if you want to just use those as a jumping off point for something similar like that in your own world. Primal Fruit kind of falls into the same category there. And Unearthly Roads, again, I feel like this is a thing that people could have established in their games, but this is Wizards kind of giving credence there. Think of it, you could almost establish certain areas in your homebrew world or your other games, whatever game you're playing, could establish these unearthly roads, which may or may not, like almost like a Bifrost situation. Might be dangerous if it gets, the wrong people know about them, but basically using them as like a magic bullet train between different cities, especially if you don't have access to someone with teleportation style magic that can just bamf you from one place to another. Maybe you learn about an unearthly road, and that's the mission, is to secure the unearthly road path between this city and this city so that it can be, the gates can be open and people can just go through freely. Or maybe you use it and you don't want anybody else to know and you're worried about someone collapsing it. There's a lot of good story hooks there. But overall, Magic Phenomenon, I'm kind of lukewarm on. I think I definitely like the supernatural regions better. And Natural Hazards, I don't have my hopes up a lot because I kind of think we know a lot of them already, but we'll see. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.